Welcome to Finance Unfiltered from the team at Yellow Finch Financial. We're here to help you build your financial nest, whether you're figuring out a budget or planning for the big stuff. Skip the jargon and ditch the suits. Just real talk, honest takes, and a little bit of fun while we figure out money together.
Welcome back to the Finance Unfiltered podcast. I'm your host, John Lawrence. Joining me today is Quinn Michelson, one of our, no offense to the other advisors out there, one of our younger advisors. What I really want to talk about is some of the challenges really facing our industry as a whole. I think it's really no secret that when most people think of a financial advisor, it tends to be an older guy that people are thinking about. And yeah, that's true. A lot of our advisors are pretty old, and there's not really too many people coming in to replace them. And so it's kind of, I just want to talk about what we're seeing, what kind of trends we're looking at. AI is another big thing people are talking about, taking away everyone's jobs and what we're seeing. So Quinn, I mean, what are your thoughts? Obviously, you've been with us for what, 7, 8 years now, if not longer?
Yeah, we're going on 7 years now with the firm, and even in that span of time, I feel like the landscape has changed pretty dramatically. Yeah. Not only from the advisor side of things and from our perspective, but I think also for prospective clients. Mm-hmm. And certainly younger generations are facing a lot of different challenges that some of which we'll touch on today, of course. But yeah, the landscape is looking a lot different in 2025 than it did in 2018 when when I first walked through the front door here. So hopefully we can touch on a couple of those things today and provide some perspective on how the landscape is changing, and then what sort of, not only us as a firm we're doing, but industry-wide, what some of the changes are to kind of address the new issues being faced by clients.
God, 2018. I feel like anything pre-COVID feels like a lifetime ago. It's wild. I mean, so much has changed in the last couple of years.
That's so true.
But, well, you mentioned our clients too, and people think of, when we're working with a financial advisor, it's your parents and grandparents, but the baby boomer generation isn't getting any younger, and so we're looking out into the next 5, 10, 15, 20 years. The baby boomer generation is the richest generation that we've ever seen in the United States, and they are transferring their wealth to the next generations. And so, like you said, we've seen so much of that over the last couple of years, and there's expectations that in the next 20 years, there could be $100 trillion moving hands from baby boomers down to Gen X, to millennials, and even to Gen Z, which most people don't even think are out of college yet. So,
Yep, that's very true. And I think too that there's going to be a bigger onus on folks inheriting that type of wealth at an age where they're still working, and they're still in the period of years where they're showing a good amount of income on paper, and they're not necessarily on the forefront of retirement. So establishing relationships with a financial planner earlier, I think, is more important than maybe it once was for our parents and generations prior.
Yeah. And we're seeing that that's happening. I mean, on average, a baby boomer wasn't meeting with somebody until they were in their mid-40s. And we're seeing Gen X and millennials are talking with people in their early 30s. And Gen Z, there are people who are talking with advisors who are 20, 21, 22 years old. Because we're having all these questions of either, hey, I've been working for a few years and I'm starting to get more income that I know what to do with, and I have some questions, or God forbid, we have a situation where a parent or a grandparent has passed away and left some money. And like you said, if someone's making good money because they're still working and all of a sudden they inherit a $500,000 IRA, that can have some serious tax implications, and most people have no idea.
Right. And specifically, if you have no knowledge as to what types of assets you may be inheriting. It could be land, it could be 401k or IRA retirement assets, or it could be non-qualified dollars that you're coming in touch with, and all of those different asset types have different rules, and we're not going to get into the weeds on any of that today necessarily, but certainly there is more onus, I think, on younger generations to get some financial literacy in their back pocket a little earlier now than in generations prior.
Yeah,
for sure.
And I think really the biggest problem is, like I said, when you think of a financial advisor, the average age of an advisor is 57. And so if I'm 30, well, I don't really want to meet with somebody who's going to be retiring in the next couple of years. I mean, we're looking at our estimates around that about half of all advisors in our industry are set to retire within 10 years. So we're really running into a situation where younger people are needing more and more help, and there's more and more people who are wanting to pay money for a human to help them versus AI. And we're in a situation where a lot of advisors aren't going to be there for too much longer. So kind of why I joked earlier, I wanted to bring a younger guy in, because there are obviously younger people coming into the industry, but maybe not at the pace that we were expecting or hoping for.
Right. And I think on that front, there are a lot of firms out there. I shouldn't say a lot. There are a number of firms out there that are trying to take some different tactics in terms of enticing new young professionals into our industry and not make it seem like there are a litany of barriers to entry. To come into a firm, learn for a couple of years. You don't necessarily have to jump right in and try to build a book, right after you get your Series 7 license and get out there and get going. There's a more graduated trajectory that you can get on that makes you, not only as the younger advisor, feel like you're gaining confidence before you're sitting in front of clients, but also for the clients to know, hey, this isn't some young buck that just started yesterday, and I'm going to entrust my financial future to you. So there are firms, and our firm being one of them, some firms out there that are taking tactics like having younger advisors get licensed, do their studies, obviously build their wealth of knowledge, and then sit in with a first chair advisor that's seasoned and learn kind of on the job a little bit more than just, hey, go out there and see how you do and see if you can sink or swim.
Yeah. I mean, that eat what you kill mindset was everywhere. I mean, even up to probably 10 years ago.
Mm-hmm.
That was something we talked a lot about in the last episode too. So seeing that change, and like you said, the mentoring process and things are so important, because there's a lot of stuff that you have to learn. And you have all these different designations you can get, and you're meeting people for the first time as clients who are trusting you with everything they have. And if you're sitting there trying to worry about putting food on the table for yourself and your family, I mean, that's just not feasible. And so to see over the last couple of years, like you said, more mentoring, more, stability for younger advisors is huge. And so we're slowly but surely starting to see some, more younger people get into it. And we had, speaking of our firm, our first intern for the first time in I guess since you were an intern, right?
I think, yeah, I believe it was. Yeah. Well, we had Blake in there a couple years back. So, but yeah, I believe it's been about 3 years at least since we've had an intern over the summer. Yeah.
And things like that too help so much, because, as important of an industry as this is, it's also kind of a niche industry. There aren't too many people who are 14, 15 years old saying, I want to become a financial advisor.
Yeah, it is, at least in my experience, and maybe you would agree, it may take having some level of personal experience, whether it's a family member that's in the industry or someone closely that's into it, and maybe prompts you to start looking into it. Because I think for me personally, coming into this industry, you have a mindset of, okay, it's all going to be investments, and it's a heck of a lot more of planning and strategizing than it is about, hey, let's check the stock market every 10 minutes. You're in client meetings most of the day, and so. It's a very different industry than maybe some people think on the surface before getting into it. But
it's definitely something that people with, a certain calling of wanting to help people get into. And again, if that all sounds great and everything, but if I'm told I'm going to be making $30,000 a year plus commissions, I don't care how good this job makes me feel, I'm not doing that.
Right.
So, things like internships, things like mentorship programs, things like being more open to people coming in from other jobs. I mean, we've got JP Morgan down the street, and they're a massive company, and they have all sorts of different kind of training programs and things, and their turnover rates are crazy. And there are plenty of people who have said, well, okay, this just wasn't the right fit for me because I don't want to work at some monster company. Why don't I try going into financial advising, work for a smaller firm, get to know people a little bit better, have opportunities like that.
Yep. And it's a smaller firm, like I say smaller in the grand scheme of independent firms. I suppose we're not that small at this point, but having more of that local value and things like that to what we do, and the more relationship based process that we use is certainly something that makes me, and I'm sure you and our other advisors, want to stay here long term. And another thing that's interesting to me is, just as we're talking about the shift from a lot of the older advisors that are out there leaving the industry, and the shift to, some of the younger folks like us in this business, you think about the fact that when an older advisor transitions out, he or she may be in their mid 60s or even late 60s in some instances. And then you've got generally someone that's roughly our age, about 30, late 20s probably by the time you're getting all of your licenses completed and are sitting first chair. You've got a big gap in perspective between a 65-year-old and maybe a 25-year-old and how you relate to clients. And so that's another big thing that I think is a little bit daunting for a young professional coming into this business going, okay, I'm going to be advising some people that are a couple decades older than me. Yep. And they're used to maybe getting the advice they've gotten up to this point from someone that's quite a bit older than I am and had different life experiences. So finding a way to relate to folks at different stages of life is certainly something you got to get used to in this business for sure.
Yeah. And you don't want to sound a little rude, but as wealth is transferring to younger generations, as an advisor, sometimes it's nice to be talking with somebody a little bit closer to your age, and you can say, I just have more in common with you. We can relate with each other more. And, on the same side of things with the client, if I'm 30, I don't want to talk to a 60-year-old. I'd rather talk to a 30-year-old.
Sure.
So, the more people that we can get in the industry, the better it's going to be, both for people to get more used to on our side, working with younger people, but then also from the client's point of view, being able to have somebody that they can relate to better. So.
I think there's a lot of validity to that. And I think along with that comes, the types of investments that are taking more interest now from younger generations versus, in years past, like we've already alluded to, there's a lot of product-specific sales, meeting quotas, selling annuities, life insurance, things like that was, I don't want to cast any aspersions, but in a lot of instances, there's a lot of, hey, let's fit a square peg in a round hole to make this product fit this person's situation, even if in your heart of hearts it may not. Yeah. Whereas nowadays there's a bigger push for fee-based advising, and so your interests can be far more aligned with your clientele. Yeah. And then younger generations are also more interested in things like ESG, environmental, social, and governance. So investments that are more honed into maybe your values, looking at companies that share your same set of values versus just, hey, what's the bottom line rate of return on something like that. So that's a big shift too. And I think younger advisors coming into the industry have a little bit more of an ear to the ground on things like that. So that's a big change and a big shift for sure.
Yeah. Other big shifts that people are talking about, which is something that I think has been a little bit counterintuitive to kind of what the general narrative is AI in our industry. I think there's been a lot of pushback, especially from younger clients, about working with, an AI or a robo-advisor, as people call them, or getting all of their information and guidance from a computer. There have been plenty of studies and things that have looked and said people are even willing to pay a premium on fees to meet with an actual human being. So I just think that's really interesting. Obviously, AI can do a lot and can help in things, but I think there's been a big push still to keep the advisor in there because you want somebody that you can relate to, somebody that, is more in touch with what you're saying and what you want, rather than just ChatGPT saying, well, I talked to 10,000 other people like you, and here's what the 51% of people wanted.
Right. And I think a good example of why the human element of this business is important versus, just a digital-based AI service for planning is, for instance, our firm, there's typically kind of a data gathering conversation that happens on the front end whenever anyone, has interest in meeting with one of the advisors. And from that data may not be collected by the advisor that they'll ultimately meet with. Yeah. Typically, it's our operations manager that'll have that first discussion with a potential client. He'll jot down a whole bunch of their information, and then that information will go to the advisor to kind of read through that before we actually meet with the client. And so we can look at all those numbers on paper and all of that data that was gathered without having spoken to that client, and we can make a lot of assumptions as to what might be the best recommendation for certain things within their plan. Then you meet with them. And then you find out from that personal relationship, hey, they may not be a good fit for the suggestion that I had in my brain when I looked at this on paper. Yeah. So that is one of those things where, AI can look at all the data points. You can plug in all of your personal info and your, what you save and what you spend and all that, and it can spit out a recommendation, but it's not going to know you personally.
Yeah.
And that's really important when making any recommendations for what we do.
Absolutely. Yeah. The other thing is, how many times have we done some data gathering or something and meet with the client and we say, well, you told us A, B, and C, and then you start to know them and you go, well, I told you A, but actually it's more like this.
Correct.
Which, if you just trusted the numbers on paper, some people, this is personal finance. It's very personal. So sometimes people will fudge the numbers a little bit. But once you get to know them and say, I'm not coming at you, I'm not trying to insult you or something, I'm trying to help you.
Correct.
And getting down to the root causes of some of the issues isn't the most fun thing in the world sometimes, but it's what has to be done.
That's very, very true. And along with that, to just kind of add on to the point you just made, is that, AI is not going to ask some of those questions. Yeah. AI is not going to ask you, what's your parents' longevity look like? Yeah. What some of those questions that, like you said, we don't enjoy asking them. We don't like to have to ask them, but that's part of the picture, and it helps us plan better.
Yeah.
And you're not going to necessarily get some of those questions that are hard hitting being prompted by ChatGPT or whatever you may be using out there as a digital service. So I think the human element is at this point anyway still at the very forefront of what we do.
Yeah. I thought it was a little crazy. I mean, like I said, people were willing to pay even a premium as high as, when we talk about fee-based planning, 50 to 100 basis points. It's crazy. So, the demand for human interaction is getting, if not still very high, is getting more and more prevalent. And so, people think this is a dying industry or that AI is going to replace us. Sure, it can do things, but there is still a massive need for new, younger advisors to come in who are passionate about helping people, who really want to make a difference in their clients' lives, to get into this industry, help people, and really try to make a difference in their community.
Yep, 100%. And, when you are a younger advisor in this industry, there's not a lot of, there's not necessarily a whole lot of back office help. Mm-hmm. For a lot of the administrative tasks and things like that. And so, I mean, that's kind of a shameless segue into the way that we currently use AI within our firm is sort of a way to help, with some of those more mundane tasks that are administrative. We utilize, an AI service that can help with some of those and, take some of the mundane tasks off of the plates of younger advisors and not have to have the human element with that, versus using AI to build a portfolio or anything like that. We're nowhere close to that, at least not at this juncture. So we certainly are able to leverage AI, but in a way where we feel it's most applicable for the day-to-day operation. Yeah.
Have you ever seen, I forget the actual ticker symbol now, but there's the AI-driven portfolio manager. There's an ETF that's been out there for years where the AI picks 100% of the investments. And historically speaking, it's been fine. It hasn't really been any better or worse than humans trying to pick investments. So even though you said investments aren't everything that we do, it's not even close. Even then, when everyone's like, oh my God, the AI is going to solve the stock market. Not so much. Well, it is definitely very useful, though. I mean, like you said, we do it. We do use AI a lot at our company, and it can help out a ton, but there's some stuff you just can't replace.
Correct. And the AI programs that are building portfolios out there, they're using all available data to make their decisions. And we're trying to do the same thing. Maybe not quite as at the level of efficiency as a computer program that has the certain inputs that it has. But, looking back, I was actually looking at our YouTube page just the other day, and I was looking at some of the videos that we had posted 3 years ago. So that puts us in 2022. Yeah. Where the market did have a pretty crummy year. We had inflation coming up to, I won't call them record highs, but several decade highs. Yeah. That's for darn sure. And there was a podcast we had titled where we had a commentator from Commonwealth come in and, give a talk about impending recession. Yes, no, maybe. was the title. And we have not had that recession in 3 years.
Yeah.
And we kept kind of seeing headlines to that effect the last several years. And if AI is picking based on that, I mean, you could have been screwed. AI can be just as wrong as humans, as it pertains to things like forecasting recessions and spikes in the market and everything in between.
Yeah. So, people like to say, like I said, this is a dying industry, or you should never become a financial advisor. But I mean, the need is higher than ever before. AI is not going to be replacing our jobs, and the ability for younger people to get in and the barriers to entry have been lowered. So if this is something that you're passionate about, if you're thinking about, it is still very much alive and well. And I think that's really kind of the message that we want to tell people, of saying we're not going anywhere, we're not going to be replaced. We're here to stay for the long run, and we're going to be here for you and your kids and your grandkids and so on and so forth.
Yep, 100%. And you alluded to it earlier. The old school style of eat what you kill is by and large going by the wayside. I mean, it's still out there to a certain degree, but a lot of firms, ours included, have restructured compensation schedules and things like that to where it's more salary based, and you don't feel that inherent conflict of interest in how you operate with your clientele.
Yeah.
And I think for me personally, if I had to work in an office where I was trying to sell a product over and over again that didn't fit someone's needs, that'd be tough.
No.
And I don't think I could do that.
No.
But the way that our firm is structured, and a lot of others are moving to a similar structure, allows a younger person to get into this industry and feel like they don't have to sacrifice their morals, and then can truly help people and not feel like interests are unaligned.
Yeah. The vast majority of people are moving in the right direction, and like I said, we're not going anywhere.
Yeah.
Anything else you'd like to add?
Well, I think we about covered everything on our perspective agenda here.
Right.
I appreciate you giving me the chance to
Absolutely.
sit down with you today.
Hopefully it won't be the last time. Appreciate everyone tuning in. Looking forward to talking with you again soon.
Till next time.
Certain sections of this commentary may contain forward-looking statements based on reasonable expectations, estimates, projections, and assumptions. Forward-looking statements are not guarantees of future performance and involve certain risks and uncertainties which are difficult to predict. All indices are unmanaged and are not available for direct investment by the public. Past performance is not indicative of future results. This podcast is provided for general information purposes only and does not constitute either tax, legal, or financial advice. Please consult a tax preparer, professional tax advisor, financial advisor, or lawyer regarding your specific circumstances. Investing involves risk, including the loss of principal. No strategy can guarantee any objective or goal will be achieved.